Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway.
Welcome back to Paris History. Avec Hemingway. I'm back with Claudine, and today we are working our way around the Lower Saint-Germain area, which is a favorite for Claudine and many other people. So we hope you enjoyed the show today, and I'll let Claudine take it from here.
Yeah, I always think of this in my mind, I feel like it's like the upper Saint-Germain, but because it's south of the city, because where you are, you're north.
Yeah.
And then because the left bank is south, this is the southern part of the lower part of Saint-Germain. But in my mind, I always think of it as the upper. So, you call it whatever you'd like. Just make sure you go and find it.
Find it, listen to the show.
Yeah. But there is a beautiful church to go see there. Unfortunately, you only could go in there one time of the year. But if from the outside, it's still absolutely beautiful. So we're going to start outside, which is the Église Val de Grâce. And it is this beautiful abbey. And it has a hospital and everything. There's actually behind it is the Val de Grâce. It's a more contemporary hospital. I mean, we're talking like mid 20th century compared to this. But the abbey was first built by Anne of Austria in the 17th century for Marguerite de Veny de Abus. She was a nun and an abbess that she decided that Anne of Austria would build this for her. The first stone was placed on July 3rd, 1624. So
Wow.
almost 400 years ago.
Wow.
At the time, Anne of Austria was desperate to get pregnant because, that's your whole job as a queen. And so she could not. They had been married. She had been married to Louis XIII for quite some time. She was not getting pregnant, and she was a very devout religious woman. And she thought that if she just kept building these things, that God would, in appreciation, give her a child.
Is that what they do for IVF today?
That's apparently, maybe that's what, if you are on IVF, which I hear is just, it's not easy and incredibly expensive, just maybe build a church instead.
Yeah, and then
I might do it.
A child.
Yeah. But on April 1st, 1645, it worked. And that was actually, she had already had Louis XIV. He was 7 years old at that time. And on April 1st, 1645, the first stone was laid by Louis XIV. And she fulfilled her promise because God gave her a child. And her son would grow to, maybe this is why he turned into such an egotistical, because he was basically told he was a gift of God.
I mean, if you tell any child that over and over again, they're going to have a certain personality.
Yeah. I mean, and then he eventually thought that God actually performed through him, that he could literally touch people and heal them. So, maybe this is all because of his mother, which is usually where all those things go back to, the mother.
Sure.
But Francois Mansart was the first that was asked to design this beautiful Latin cross-shaped church in the Baroque style, but he wasn't able to complete it. And then a gentleman named Jacques Lemercier took over the project. Lemercier also designed the fantastic Palais Royal and the Chapel of the Sorbonne, but also the Pavillon d'Horloge, which is at the Louvre, which is in that center part of the Sully, which is that very center part of the Louvre when you're standing there at the pyramid looking back, has the clock up there. Inside the church is that you could only go to on Patreon weekend, that third weekend in September that I've talked about 1,000 times, because it's my favorite. But in there's this really amazing canopy over the high altar. I'll put some pictures up and have some on my Instagram too. It is absolutely gorgeous. It was designed by Gabriel Leduc, and it has these twisted columns around the side, and the nativity by Michel Auger. It is just absolutely amazing. And when I first went in there, it just was just jaw-dropping how gorgeous the inside of this church is. And it's not really even used as a church anymore as well. So it's kind of sad that you can't go into it anytime I'm sure there's maybe a few other days of the year that they sometimes do special things, but I have not seen that. And I get people all the time messaging me, ask how to get in there. And sadly, just that one weekend is pretty much the only time. But Anne of Austria, she had created the St. Anne Chapel, not named after her, but there is actually the Saint, St. Anne. But I'm sure she had a little bit thinking, of course she'd, if there was St. Claudine, I'd be, I'd probably do that too. But she had it installed to the left of the altar. And at the time she did it so it would hold 40 hearts of the kings and queens of France, like literally their heart.
There are 40 of them?
40 of them.
Jeez.
But during the French Revolution, of course, somebody went in there and, they wanted to destroy every semblance of anything that was royalty, including those hearts. And then there was a gentleman named Louis-Francois Petit, Redel, who took this to his advantage and thought, oh, well, they just are destroying all these things. And, they just were destroying them and throwing them down on the ground and breaking them. But he had this idea because it was actually mummies were used to create a very specific and very important color of paint.
What?
Yeah. So there's this paint and it's called mummy brown. And so Louis Francois, took these and ended up selling them to a paint crusher. A paint crusher back then is because literally this was before they had tubes of paint that now you go buy at Michael's and everywhere else. They'd have to actually create this. And that's why some of those incredibly expensive paints at one point, like lapis lazuli, that was actually made by crushing gems to make paint.
That's so wild.
Yeah. So mummy brown was this color, and it's a very specific color of brownish red, very dark red. It was actually created from mummified remains.
Wow.
Yeah. So he ended up taking these, selling them to this paint crusher, and this paint crusher made paint and sold it. There is a painting that's in the Louvre that's in the Sully wing on the second floor in room 938. It's a very small room, but there is a painting in there called The Interior of the Kitchen, and it's by Martin Drolling, and I'll put a picture of it up. And it is said to be created with that specific brown from the Val de Grace.
It's kind of cool that you can know what's in the paints. And
yeah. They don't have it on the, the Louvre doesn't say anything about that, of course. But I found this information. Other historians know this information. I've gotten really close to the painting thinking are there chunks of the queen's heart on it?
Oh.
But there is not. It just looks like paint. You would never know this by just looking at this painting. But it is kind of cool. And to think that if that's what that was.
Yeah, I mean, who would think it? That's so disturbing, but interesting.
Yeah, and I wonder if they still make that today.
Probably not.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think, when we talked about the catacombs, I mean, a lot of those, when the catacombs bones were moved, nothing was left. It was just bones. And those weren't, you have to be mummified. It has to be, they have to do it in a certain way. It couldn't just be you buried a pigeon in your backyard and you took it out and decided to make mummy brown paint. But I wonder if they still make that today. It probably is not so PC though.
No, if they do, it's probably super special to get it.
Yeah, I know.
Weird. So
weird. That could be a total true crime podcast too. Somebody was a painter and then years later they found out.
Oh no.
Actually,
don't
all
get
of these paintings.
Yes.
They have paintings in their home and then that gives up the evidence. It's no worse than going down to the catacombs and looking at literally real bodies.
Yeah, we're turning into a true crime podcast. We're going to start an episode.
I do actually have some that we are going to do, a couple that are kind of going to be true crime.
Who done it?
Yeah, I'm excited about those. But right outside the door, it's really beautiful. There's a huge gate that goes around it. When you go in September, when you go on Patreon weekend, you could also go into the rest of the building. There's a tiny chapel that's there that Anne of Austria built. That's in the back. That's really beautiful and has her initials in the floor in marble. And then you go through they have a kind of almost like a medical little museum, and they have all these really neat I mean, it's not creepy at all, but because it used to be a place where, you know, they'd actually take care of soldiers. And it's kind of before they had Les Invalides. So it's really, really cool and interesting to go around. It's definitely one of those places that if you are there in September, definitely on that weekend, go here, because it is one of those places. When I choose where I'm going, I definitely go to those places. I can't go all the time. Like, I'm not going to go into Saint-Sulpice that weekend because they're doing something special, because I could do that anytime.
Yeah, you got to use that special time where you can go
You got to plan ahead and execute it.
Exactly.
Yeah. But when you leave there, you go straight down the street. This is the Rue de Val de Grace. On this street at number 6, Alphonse Mucha lived there. He was the one that did all of those amazing pieces dedicated to Sarah Bernhardt. He was the Art Nouveau artist. And they're actually next year going to do one of those immersive exhibit that's going to include him, you know, when they project it on the wall. So that's going to be actually kind of a cool one to see. At number 7 and 9 across the street, there's a really beautiful little garden that you could see through the gate. It always reminds me of Notting Hill, you know, at the end when or that point when what's his name? What's the Hugh Grant, and he pretends to jump over the wall and he can't, and he says oopsie daisy, and Julia Roberts makes fun of him, but they go into that, you know, go into this big wall, and there's this beautiful garden. This is what you see. That always reminds me of this at this number 7. We go down the street and we take a right, and that's where the Avenue de l'Observatoire is. We talked about that a couple weeks ago when we talked about the Denfert Rochereau area, but this is a great little street. At number 15, the sculptor Anton Mercier lived, and he died there in 1916. He designed the genius of the arts on the Denon wing of the Louvre that is right there overlooking the bridge of the Pont de Carousel. This really great piece. It was done in 1877. That's all in bronze and patina now. Number 1 is a really stunning building that's on the corner. It was done in 1923 by Henri Delorme. The facade includes lions and elephant heads, and the corbelled windows even have little mascarons, so little masks that, like, kind of what you see on the Pont Neuf. But these ones, it's really cool because on each level they age. So the lower level, these little mascarons are babies. Then the next level, they're kind of teenagers. Then the next ones, they're adults, and then middle-aged. And then when they're really old on the top level.
That's cool.
This building is like, it's one of my favorites. It's right on the corner. It overlooks into the Luxembourg. I have for years always just like stopped and stared at this building. You know, you'd probably have to be old, like, you know, the mass on the building to afford that top floor, because it's this beautiful rounded, almost has like a dome on the top. I just always am like, I want to live on those top 2 floors.
That's my home.
Overlooking the Luxembourg. It's really one of the coolest buildings. I have searched for more information other than that, but I've never even been able to find, like, is there anybody cool that lived there? It's this really gorgeous building. Running across the street there is a Rue Auguste Comte. He was a French philosopher, and it runs between the lower and the upper Jardin de Luxembourg. The upper is the part that's the bigger part that we've talked about, and then the lower Luxembourg is this very long, narrow strip. And that one is the part of the garden you can actually sit on the grass, because you can't sit on the grass anywhere else in the Luxembourg, but this is the part that you could actually sit on the grass that runs along there. On the other side of the street is a bunch of buildings that belong to the university. So at number 8, there's a really, really cool building. It's called the Institute of Art and Archaeology. It was built in 1925 by architect Paul Bigot, and it was funded by a woman named Mary Louise Arconti Visconti. She married an Italian gentleman named Gianmar Visconti, who died 3 years after they were married, and she inherited his huge fortune. She loved art and had a huge collection of over 300 pieces that she donated to the Louvre. But she also gave 2 to 3 million francs to the university to have this building built.
What? Wow.
Yeah, and when I went to the Sorbonne on that special weekend, I've gone before, but I went again this year. And in the entrance of the Sorbonne, there's, these big marble plaques on the wall, and it's all about, people that have donated to the school. And right there, first thing I see is her name.
Oh, that's so cool. I love
Yeah,
that.
which I was like, oh, I always get excited when I see those, now it's like when I first went to the Sorbonne, which was probably 5 years ago, I had no idea. None of that would have meant anything to me. So that's why I love going back to some of these places on that weekend, because then I might have seen it before, but now it's there's so much more that I know about. So it speaks to me so much more.
Yeah.
But this building is really cool. It's all done in brick color. It has all these really cool sculpture and bas reliefs on it. Paul Bigot used a combination of what is called internationalism and Art Deco style in concrete and red brick, specifically from the Vitry de Sorsins. If you look closely at the frieze that goes around the building like a band, it's all terracotta, and it is basically includes some of the most famous pieces that they actually study there at the school. So there's gargoyles of that have been there from Greece. There is Ludovici's throne. There's all of these really cool pieces that are mostly like Roman and Greek. So when you really get close to it and look at it, it's really a stunning, really, really cool building to look at.
Yeah, I need to go check it out. I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah, it's most people, like I've had people send me messages like, what do you know about this building? Because it's just so different. It's so completely, it's in red brick. It's just, you don't see a lot of red brick in Paris. So when you do, it kind of really stands out. But it's a really cool one. I love that one. I'd love to go inside that one, but that one is not one they open up for you to go visit.
Sadly.
I got to find somebody. But running right across that is Rue Michelet. It was named for historian Jules Michelet. And at number 4, an amazing woman lived. Her name was Genevieve de Gaulle. You might know that last name because she was the niece of Charles de Gaulle. She was also a resistance fighter and a leader. She was arrested on Rue Bonaparte in 1943, just right there close to the Saint-Germain-des-Prés. She was deported on February 3rd, 1944. But because of her uncle, Charles de Gaulle, she was used as a bargaining chip, and that luckily protected her because they were able to say, do this or we're going to kill your niece. She survived and was liberated on April 25th, 1945, thankfully.
Oh, wow.
But she married a gentleman named Bernard Anthignos, who was working for the newly formed Ministry of Culture. But she still worked tirelessly for survivors and those that perished under the Nazis. She later and would also fight for those suffering through poverty. And on February 15th, 2002, she died here in her apartment. She is now in the Pantheon. Her family refused to allow her body to be moved from the grave in Beaussy Cemetery, but on May 27th, 2015, dirt from her grave was symbolically interred there at the Pantheon, which is exactly what they did with Josephine Baker, just basically almost exactly a year ago.
The dirt? Really?
Yeah, so with Josephine Baker and also with Genevieve, they would not, the family's like, no, Josephine Baker's family, her children said, no, we're not going to move her from Monaco, which is where she's buried, which is where she was at the end of her life because Princess Grace took care of her. They said, no, we are not going to move her. She's going to stay. So that's the same thing the de Gaulle descendants did as well. So with Josephine, what they did is they took 4 clumps of dirt that they picked up from the 4 places she lived. So there's some dirt from St. Louis. Almost says St. Louis, St. Louis, Missouri, from Paris, from her grave in Monaco, and then also from her chateau in the Dordogne. So when you go to the Pantheon, you go down below to the crypt, which is always really cool to see. It's a great place to go on a super hot day in Paris because it's always cold underneath.
Yeah.
But there is, when you go to see Josephine's actually just in the same section, opposite side of where Genevieve de Gaulle is, but where Josephine Baker is, you see the big like sarcophagus tomb that it's the same in every single one. They all look exactly the same. They're just kind of sandstone with their name and date, the year they were born and died. But then above Josephine's, on the little level above it, because there's nobody else in where she is, there's just this little kind of rectangular box, and that's where her dirt is.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. So last year when they were doing it, and I did all that stuff for the French embassy in the US on their social media, writing about it, which was so fun and such an honor that they asked to do that. But everybody, all the US military is like, oh, they're moving her. And it's like, no, it's just dirt.
Yeah, it's just dirt. Yeah, because I thought it was a person.
No, and so like that's their decision. The family could do that. And it's very symbolic. It's like, there's people that work 20, 30 years to try to get somebody, moved. I think, Rose Valland, I need to start that. I need to start the petition to get Rose Valland moved into the Pantheon.
Yeah.
Which I'm not kidding. I need to look into that, how you do that. But it's, they work a long time for this. And so it's very symbolic to say that you're I think they call it Pantheonized or something like that. They made up a word for it.
Yeah.
But it is like, because I was thinking when they were, carrying her casket, they did a whole ceremony for Josephine Baker, walking her up the Rue Soufflot, and it was this beautiful thing. They were playing her music. But I was like, you see these 8 guys carrying her casket. I was like, well, it can be very heavy because it's just a tiny box of dirt.
Yeah, exactly. It's a box of dirt.
Because I always look at when Queen Elizabeth recently died, and you see those guys that are picking up those caskets and holding them on their shoulders, like those things have to weigh so much, because sometimes they're lead, they have got to be so heavy. And I'm always terrified that what if you are the guy that like it slips and you drop it?
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
Like it's just that would be ruin you for the rest of your life if you were the one that dropped the casket of Queen Elizabeth II.
Oh my gosh.
I just think it must be. So I was like, but I bet those guys, for the Josephine Baker inductions, they're probably pretty happy. It was just dirt.
Yeah, it's just dirt. Much easier.
Yeah. But it is really cool. The Pantheon where Josephine is and where Genevieve is, that side kind of has a bunch of the resistance fighters. You could also, Simone Weil is down there, which she's been high on my list to do a podcast episode. She is another amazing French woman. She is buried there. Marie Curie and her husband Pierre Curie are buried there. Jean Moulin and a bunch of other big resistance fighters are all down in this section of the Pantheon. And it's really well done, because they actually have these like little like touch screens out opposite of each of the different crypts, and it'll tell you the story about that person in French and English and Spanish, all these different languages. So if you go there, take the time to just kind of go through them. There's just it's a couple paragraphs about each person, but it's really fascinating to see who these people are, because these are basically the great men is what they were, when they were put in there. It was for the great men of France, but now there's women in there too. But they're all like, every one of them has done something amazing, and it's really interesting to read their stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's just still blowing my mind that it's just a box of dirt.
Just a box of dirt, I know. And I'm like, well, she wasn't really moved there. But everybody's like, oh, it's so cool. I was like, yeah. I mean, it is still cool. Don't take that, don't take anything away from it. It's still really cool, but it is kind of funny because it's like, all the American media were like, oh, her body will be. It's like, yeah, no.
Nope.
Nope. But right there, we mentioned it last week's episode, but really close to here as well. And number 100 is the Musée Zakin. It was created in the former home and the atelier of the Russian artist Osip Zakin. He arrived in Paris in 1910, and he and his wife moved to this location in 1928. He was the first Cubist sculpturist. He served in the Foreign Legion during World War I, but was later dismissed when he was charged with using potatoes as projectiles when intended for food.
What?
Yeah, so maybe he was having a little bit of a food fight with some potatoes. And that got you kicked out. I mean, I think that like that would be a pretty ridiculous reason to get kicked out.
The potatoes.
But after his death in 1967, the home was given to the city of Paris by his wife. And in 1978, and that was when it was given, and it was opened in 1982. And it is, again, it's a free museum. And as I said last week, you could find one of his sculptures in the Luxembourg and also the Place Saint-Germain-des-Prés right across from the church. And it was closed, just reopened in the beginning, about August of this year, because it was being redone. But they do some special exhibits in there. But it is a free museum and it's small. But there's not a lot of museums down in this area, but it is a cool one just to go pop in there and go check out.
Yeah, I want to check that out. I don't think I've done that one.
Yeah. Also on this street is where at number 84, nothing remains there, but that is where Auguste Bartholdi lived, and he died there. He, of course, is the one that did Liberty Lighting the World, or as people know, the Statue of Liberty. He died there on October 4th, 1904. And as you go along the street, it's basically where it is going outside of the Luxembourg Garden on that far side that we kind of where we talked about last week as well. But there is, at the end of it, there is the corner on the Rue de Vaugirard that is the longest street in Paris. But at number 58 there on the corner is this really cool building I love there. The door is amazing. It's incredibly high wood carved door that has like basically big, huge kind of circles on it. But above it, there's a balcony. And on this balcony is a marble statue of Zeus.
What?
Yeah. And it sometimes it moves from one corner. Sometimes it's on the left side of the balcony. Sometimes it's on the right side. And funny thing, I'd made a little video outside of it one day, and a friend of ours sent me a message and said, I have a funny story about that building. Apparently somebody she used to date that lived there, and she had all these things to tell me about that apartment.
Well, there you go. You had an insider.
I know. I was like, oh, tell me more. But this building is also where one of your favorites used to live, Zelda and F. Scott Fitzgerald. They lived there just for about 3 months. This is only about 2 blocks away from where Hemingway lived. This is on the corner of Rue de Vaugirard and Rue Bonaparte. And then basically the next street over, Rue de Four, is where Hemingway lived with Pauline, his second wife, but he would tell everybody not to tell the Fitzgeralds where he lived, because this is Zelda hated Hemingway. And at this point, this is when, I mean, they were always big drinkers, but and Hemingway was a big drinker as well, but he just kind of was like, didn't want to hang out with them all the time. So he would tell people like, don't tell Scott where I live.
That's so weird. They were like best friends.
Yeah, well, they were good friends. I mean, if you read Movable Feast, like he's not the kindest person to him, but that is also because of editing by Mary, his fourth wife, which we know I can't stand. But it kind of made it sound even worse, that Hemingway was even worse to F. Scott. But Zelda hated Hemingway from the moment she met him.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so she was never very nice. And I'm sure after she'd had a few drinks, she probably got even meaner.
Exactly.
But right there on the corner on Rue Bonaparte, there's a beautiful little garden there on the right. And in the spring, it's covered with wisteria, like literally just covered with wisteria. It smells so good. It's so beautiful. And you go down a little bit farther, there is the Fountain of Peace. We used to be in the Marseille Saint-Germain before it looks like it does now. When it was just big and open. So it was near the Saint-Sulpice, the Marseille Saint-Germain. It was moved to this spot in 1937. And if you saw the Sex and the City episodes, at the last 2 episodes, when she comes to Paris, she is walking on the street there in Saint-Germain, steps in dog poo, which every one of us have had to do at least one time in Paris. And she's wearing like white high heels, and she stops at this fountain to wash it off of her feet. But it's very funny, because if you watch the episode and then go to Paris and look at this fountain, there's no part of that lower part of the fountain that she washed her feet up. Like that was some TV magic.
They do a lot of that.
They do a lot of that. And it really, I get so many people asking me because of the Da Vinci Code and the Saint-Sulpice, asking me, they're like, we were there, we can't find those markers. I was like, none of those are there. That was just a movie.
Not real.
The magic of Hollywood. But you're on Rue Bonaparte, which is a wonderful street. And if you just keep going down, there's even more great things that we'll have to share another time.
Yeah, you're going to have to tune in and go visit Claudine's website, claudinehemingway.com. She can plan a trip for you or help you enjoy Paris on one of her many tours. And we hope you guys enjoyed the show.
Thanks for listening today, guys. If you're interested in learning more about Claudine, her tours, history, and the beautiful photographs that she posts all over Instagram, tune into her website, claudinehemingway.com.